Prime-time local news, serving the Lakeland and Midwest regions.
Lloyd's first ever Tattoo Expo took place over the weekend at the Civic Center. Our Colin Dunlop has more.
The Border City Tattoo Expo was a 3-day event held at the Civic Center for tattoo fans of all ages, from permanent to temporary tattoo walk-ins, as well as loads of prizes and vendors from all across Canada. The expo had quite the turnout.
All the artists that I've been talking to have been absolutely slammed. Like there's been like walk-in after walk-in. They've been doing like tons of flash, really very busy over the whole entire weekend. So as someone that goes to tattoo shows, that's what you hope for, is to go somewhere and be busy and make up the cost for traveling and going somewhere and hanging out with friends, So I'm really happy to hear that everyone's, really happy with the way things are going.
For the tattoo artists, having an expo in a smaller city turns out to be a more rewarding experience.
It's really well organized. It is definitely smaller and more intimate, which is usually more of an advantage than the super huge ones with like 600 artists, because you tend to just go missing.
The team behind the event is hopeful that with their small town hospitality, that Lloyd can be home to more tattoo expos in the future.
The feedback from the artists that I'm getting is that it really kind of has a small town feel, which is what we're going for. We help them unpack their stuff. We take it to their booth. We walk around with food and drinks, and we treat them like their family. Like we want you here. We want to see you come here. We appreciate you having you here. We want that to be part of our mentality here.
With the event now being over, Lloyd looks to throw their hat in the ring for another expo in the future to come here. Colin Dunlop, Primetime, Local News.
And the Lloydminster Rotary Club welcomed a different type of guest speaker today. Sean Newman has become a local celebrity here in Lloyd. From a pro hockey player to podcast host, he has covered a variety of topics on his show.
It started in 2019 with based on local stories, and grew into some big names from the NHL like Don Cherry and Ron McLean, Brian Burke. And from there, COVID hit, and a guy had a choice to make, to whether to talk about it or just to keep on with different stories from the NHL. And from there, different names like Premier Daniel Smith has been on, certainly some doctors from in country, some doctors from afar, and it's really, professors, lawyers, everyday people. It's really became a show where we talk about the current events.
The Sean Newman podcast has pulled in over 1 million listeners in its lifetime.
I think as human beings, we naturally want to hear what someone thinks, not the talking points. And finding those people to come on and share their thoughts and different viewpoints is, just really galvanized an audience that was slowly growing and certainly sped it ahead.
Now, since the pandemic, Sean has taken his show into a direction that includes a variety of topics, everything from politics to religion.
They can find it on Spotify, Apple. It's on Rumble, Twitter, and Facebook.
Sean hopes to bring on more high-profile interviews in the future. And now it's time to take a look into the archives in this week's edition of Retrospect. Turning back the clock to 1994, pro-gun supporters hold a large rally in Wainwright.
United, we will stand. Divided, we will fall.
When pro-gun supporters gathered in Wainwright, it was to let the government know exactly what they thought of proposed changes to current firearm legislation. Organized by the Responsible Firearm Owners of Alberta, the protests attracted about 2,000 firearm owners from all over the province, and as far away as Montana. They say guns don't pose the problem. Criminals do.
There's no detriment out there for the criminals. The criminal gets a little slap on the wrist, he's back in the street and he retaliates.
But the groups involved in this rally say punishing firearm owners is the wrong tactic. They insist the solution is tougher sentences for convicted criminals, and that legislation already exists to do just that.
And Section 85 has been in the criminal code for many, many years. It provides for an extra sentence of 1 to 14 years for anyone who uses a gun in a serious crime, and the criminal justice system flatly refuses to use it.
And it's not just recreational gun owners and collectors that are upset. National team shooters are afraid that law changes could affect them too.
I've spent tens of thousands of dollars in my sport, years of training and competition to represent Canada nationally and internationally at competitions. So that's what I have to lose, is the loss of my sport, which I enjoy far more than anything else.
Organizers with the Wainwright Gun Rally are pleased with the reaction they have so far. They already have plans to stage more rallies like it in Alberta. And if that doesn't grab the government's attention, they say they won't hesitate to start a national movement.
And for our second story, we look back to 1998 as an annual check stop has heavy trucks on Highway 16 thinking about safety.
Both Saskatchewan and Alberta Highway Patrols teamed up today, inspecting trucks along Highway 16.
Today is one of an annual road check we hold across Canada, where we check the heavy vehicles and the heavy trucks for safety, the drivers to see if they're fit and authorized to drive the vehicles they're driving.
So, what's being checked out?
The brakes, the tires, the lights, the driver's papers, you name it, suspension, anything that could if left unchecked, cause an accident on the highway.
Since early this morning, over 60 vehicles have been inspected. Both Alberta and Saskatchewan patrols are also promoting Operation Airbrake, a program geared towards awareness in braking safety.
As part of the Operation Airbrake, we're just also trying to make drivers aware of the importance of adjusting their brakes and checking the brake items, because they rely on that to stop that vehicle because there are bigger vehicles on the road.
An Operation Airbrake is a safety program aimed at drivers of heavy vehicles that we're trying to educate them to the importance of having their air brakes properly adjusted and that they have their brake components properly maintained.
The safety inspections have been going on since about 12 o'clock last night just east of Lloydminster. They'll wrap the operations up today and move them to Vermilion.
And this has been another look back at this week in retrospect.
Retrospect this week is brought to you by Webb's Ford. Worth your while to drive the extra mile. Webb's Ford in Vermilion.
A Southwest pilot went above and beyond after a passenger accidentally locked the flight deck door. Take a look at this. The pilot was spotted crawling through the cockpit window after a passenger opened the bathroom door, which closed the cockpit door by accident. The flight from San Diego to Sacramento only left 8 minutes late after the ordeal. And now it's time for us to check in with Shelby Clark, who has a first look at your evening weather forecast.
Thank you so much, Mr. Jace Mackey. Yes, now taking a first look at your weather forecast here in the border city. We are sitting at 24, so starting off this week, we are already starting on a nice warm note. And we did receive some rainfall over the weekend, so that was very nice to see that, we were starting to get some wet conditions to help, slow down those dry conditions. So that's very nice, and we are already back up to that warm side of things. 24 right now here in the border city, and we have been seeing a mixture of some sun and cloud and a lot more sun throughout the day. So hopefully everybody's enjoying their day, because we are seeing a beautiful one starting off this week. Switching over to temperatures across the region for Alberta and Saskatchewan. On the Alberta side, most spots have warmed up, just like what we're seeing here in the border city. Most are actually seeing even a couple degrees just warmer. Some are just sitting between 24 to 26 degrees on our Alberta side, so we have quite a few at that 25-degree mark. We go a bit lower, and they start to warm up from there. We have that 27 there in Wainwright and 26 down in Provost. Also looking at that 26 up in Bonnyville, and over in Edmonton, they are looking surprisingly cooler compared to the rest of these areas, just hitting that 20-degree mark. So we are finally seeing past that 20-degree mark from what we haven't been seeing last week. We were seeing a lot of those teen temperatures. Going over to our Saskatchewan side, they are matching with us with those temperatures as well. Most are just sitting at 26 degrees on this side, so they are on the warmer side of things as we are getting closer to that 30-degree mark, so we might have some scorchers ahead. So 26 in most of these areas. We have 25 there in St. Walburg, and we go a bit lower to North Battleford, and they are seeing the warmest condition on that side at 27. And for tonight, North Battleford will be looking at that double digit again for their evening low temperature, just hitting that low of 11 degrees. So we will be warming up for our evenings once again, as we were kind of seeing some of those single digits last week, but we will be seeing those double digits for our evenings this week, I'd say. And they are expecting a mainly clear evening. And then for their Tuesday, they'll be looking at 24 for their daytime highs, so another beautiful temperature, although they are expected to have a thunderstorm and some showers in the afternoon. So that'll be interesting. It'll be kind of a switch up for North Battleford tomorrow. Hopefully they will be getting some more precipitation. That's always nice to see, especially with the wildfire situation. Cold Lake will be also seeing that low of 11 for their evening low tonight, so that double digit expected for tonight. Mostly cloudy conditions, so another clear evening. And then for their daytime high for their Tuesday, 21, so cooling down slightly for their daytime high compared to what they're seeing right now. And then for tomorrow, they'll also be expecting some showers later on in the afternoon, 1 or 2. So hopefully we all will be seeing some precipitation once again across our region. For us here in the border city, we will be expecting that low of 12 for tonight. So not cooling down by too much. We will be seeing a nice warm temperature for our evening tonight, but we should be expecting some showers later on in the evening. So that will be nice. We will be getting some more wet conditions coming even past this weekend. Then for our Tuesday, daytime high of 24 degrees. So another 24 for us expected tomorrow, and plenty of sunshine. So a beautiful day expected for our Tuesday as we continue on through this week. And now ending off the look at one of your weather photo submissions. I made that post today, so make sure to go to our Facebook page and post some nice weather photos you may have. I will use them. And I'm using one for today from Carol. Absolutely gorgeous shot. Thank you so much for this one, Carol. Love to see those colors in the sky. And that's all I have for now. For a first look at your weather forecast.
Thank you so much for that, Shelby. Make sure you keep sending her weather photos throughout the week. After the break, we'll have a look at the latest from the markets. As May comes to a close, producers in Saskatchewan are working to finish seeding. With more in this week's crop report, here's Thomas Wildman.
Once again, we have Matt Struthers for the crop report today. He's the crop extension specialist for the Government of Saskatchewan in the Ministry of Agriculture. So thank you so much for being with us today once again, Matt.
Well, thanks for having me back. It's always nice to be on.
And so, Matt, seeding has been progressing quite well throughout the month of May, and looking at the report, it's gone up quite a bit. So what is that outlook for the Government of Saskatchewan so far with how well seeding has progressed this month?
This past week has been excellent for producers. Weather-wise, they had some nice warm, kind of windy days. Kind of cool on some parts of the province, but very, very good for seeding. And so we saw a lot of progress being made up in the northern regions, and then down into the west central and southwest as well. The east central and southeast are coming along quite nicely. They're the farthest behind, just due with that excess moisture that they've been dealing with. But overall, things are looking really good. We got 68% of the crop in the ground, just about. It's just behind the 5-year average of 76%, so not a huge deal. Still a lot of work left to be done, but producers out there are going to be pushing very, very hard to get that seed in the ground over the next couple weeks.
And so here in Lloydminster, in the Northwest region, we are the furthest ahead in seeding so far, according to the crop report. And so tell me a little bit about how impressive that is for the Northwest to be so far ahead in seeding, as that's not typical. And as well, tell me, there is a little bit of a lack of moisture around here. Is that a worry so far for you in terms of the Northwest region?
Yeah, I would say it's rare, maybe, or in the last couple of years that I've been doing the report, we haven't seen the Northwest take the front seat and hold on to it all season long, in the aspect of seeding. So they're doing really well. I know they have 84% of their crop in the ground. So they're going to be wrapping up here in the next week or so, maybe a week and a half. Lots of producers up in that region have finished up. So, in this past week we did get some rainfall in that region, and that's very, very good. Good for the pastures, but also good for those emerging crops as well. So what I would like to see now that 84% of the crops in the ground, I'd like to see a good soak in rain hit that region. I know it's getting dry up there. A lot of producers are a little anxious about how dry it is. So a good soak in rain that really, really help crops emerge and germinate and emerge, and then also help those already emerged crops as well as those pastures. So looking really good. The outlook, it's always tough to rub the crystal ball and find out what's going on. But I think everybody's pretty optimistic. I know in that, especially in that region, things started out dry, but it just takes a couple good rains. There's some good soil up there. And hopefully that'll be able to tide the crop over and into the hotter months, and then hopefully we get those rainfall events in July, especially to carry us into August, and then hopefully we have a good harvest. But those are that's weeks away and months away, so we'll just have to keep checking on it.
And so we talked to Mackenzie a little bit about this last week, about how early people need to get their seed in order to make sure that they can get crop insurance. Tell me, is that there are some differences in terms of which crops and how late they can go in? Tell me a little bit about that and the dates that producers need to know about in terms of if they want to get crop insurance for their crops.
So it all comes down to the crop that they're seeding. I think the latest one, or the latest date that comes to mind is June 20th. After that, it's you can't insure those crops. You just cause issues for yourself down the road, and they just won't allow that to be done, or won't allow that to be insured. Of course, you can still seed, you can do what you want, but it just won't be insurable. And yeah, I mean that's done, because if you're seeding in, let's say up in your area in Northwest, and you're seeding June 20th, that's not a lot of time for that crop to get up out of the ground, mature, and then ripen before the fall kicks around. It's a pretty short season up there, and so that's where it's kind of nice to see that those producers are getting ahead of that that 5-year average in that region, and they're getting a lot of seed in the ground, and maybe they'll have a bit of a different season than they're typically seeing in the last couple of years. So about June 20th is the date that comes to mind when it comes to the last date. But again, that that also comes down to your region and also what crops you're looking at putting in the ground. So I'd recommend any producer who's maybe struggling to get seed in the ground is to double check that with their crop insurance agent, and work together to get that done. And hopefully the producers in the Southeast and East Central who are struggling with that excess moisture, they might just have to bite the bullet and seed around those wet areas. I know they're waiting for a lot of areas to dry up to obviously increase as many acreage or their acreage as much as possible, but they might just have to seed around it and wait for those wet areas to dry up in following years.
Thank you so much for the crop report once again, Matt, and we will be talking to either you or Mackenzie very soon.
Thank you very much. Take care.
And now it's time for us to check in once again with Shelby Clark, who has another look at your evening weather forecast.
Thanks so much again there, Mr. Jace Mackey. Yes, now taking an extended look at your weather forecast. We'll be starting off with our central zone of the provinces. And on our Alberta side, we have warmed up. We're kind of expecting this, especially what we are seeing across the region. So we have warmed up in most of these areas as well on our Alberta side in our central zone, definitely compared to what we have been seeing last week, as we were, for the most part, sitting at those teen temperatures. Now we are seeing past that 20-degree mark. Most spots are just sitting at 20 degrees on our Alberta side. And then we have a few that are slightly warmer, 21 in Whitecourt, while we have 24 in both Rocky Mountain House and down in Red Deer. And then Athabasca is still looking quite cool, just at 16 degrees, while it's definitely a switch up with Cold Lake now at 25, as they are seeing the warmest on our Alberta side. Going over to our Saskatchewan side now to check them out. They are looking a lot warmer compared to our Alberta side, as they are even seeing these temperatures getting closer to that 30-degree mark. So like I said, quite a switch up from what we have been seeing compared to last week, as we are getting closer to that 30-degree mark now. Have some scorchers ahead, most likely. 25 in Melfort and Saskatoon, while we're just seeing 26 up in Meadow Lake. And then we have even 27 now with North Battleford and Prince Albert. So just a few degrees from that 30-degree mark. But now as we go over to our northern zone, they have warmed up and trying to match with us now in our central zone. So they were kind of matching with us with those teen temperatures last week, and now they have warmed up as well for today, starting off this week. Looking at 19 still up in Uranium City. Usually they have been sitting around 15, 16, so nice to see they have warmed up by a couple degrees. Then we start to warm up from there as we go a bit lower. 21 in Stony Rapids, as well as 23 in Wollaston Lake, and then we have 24s and 25s in the rest there as we are seeing those mid-20s. Going back over to Alberta side here in our northern zone, they haven't warmed up as much as what we are seeing right now in our central zone, so they are looking slightly cooler. Most spots on this side are still sitting at those teens, so they're still looking quite cool like what we were seeing last week. 18, 19 for high level of Fort Chipewyan and down in Grand Prairie, while we're looking at 16 in Slave Lake, and Slave Lake has been continuously seeing some slightly cooler conditions compared to the rest of these areas. And then we have that 20-degree mark now in Peace River, while Fort McMurray is just hitting 24, so looking a lot warmer in Fort McMurray compared to the rest of these areas. And now going over to our southern zone to check them out. They have warmed up as well, as they are getting closer to that 30-degree mark, and we of course kind of expected that in our southern zone. Banff seems to be seeing slightly cooler conditions now, just at 17 degrees, and then we start to warm up from there. 23 in Calgary, while it's 26 in both Coronation and Lethbridge, and we go over to Medicine Hat, and they're just sitting at 27. And going back over to our Saskatchewan side here in our southern zone to check them out. Of course, they are seeing those mid-20s as well for those temperatures, as they are looking slightly closer to that 30-degree mark as well. 25 in Swift Current, while the warmest conditions we are looking at is 26 on this side with Kindersley and Moose Jaw, and then the rest are just sitting at 23. And over in Regina, hopefully everybody is safe, because I do know there was a tornado that touched down south from there, so glad to see that there wasn't many deaths or injuries, but yeah, glad to see that, you know, many people are safe after that tornado incident, and we are probably going to be seeing that quite a lot as we head more into our summer season. Now looking at some overnight evening lows on this list in our surrounding area in these spots here, we are going to be expecting those double digits for evening low temperatures tonight. We have been seeing some single digits last week as we were looking at those evening lows, but now as we are warming up for this week, we are going to be expecting to see these double digits a lot more often for our evenings. Most are going to be expecting that low of 12 to 13 degrees tonight. Meadow Lake will be expecting that low of 11, and we even have some areas expecting a thunder shower later on in the evening, so be prepared. We may have some storms coming ahead for some of these areas, but at least we will get some precipitation, so that'll be nice. And looking at our hourly forecast for our Tuesday here in the border city, our daytime high will be hitting around 24, 25, so we are expecting another beautiful day tomorrow with those double digits all throughout the day, because we will be seeing that continue past into our Wednesday, and even almost hitting that 30-degree mark on Wednesday. That will be the hottest day of the week. 28 degrees, a mixture of some sun and cloud, but don't worry, after tonight and hopefully on Thursday what it's showing, we will be seeing some more precipitation later on, and then we will be seeing some beautiful temperatures for our weekend ahead. And that's all I have for now. Our Jace Mackey, we're having news coming up after the break.
I'm happy to be joined here today with Patrick Lancaster with the City of Lloydminster to talk about a breakfast that is coming up on June 15th. It's the Seniors Food for Thought Breakfast. Thank you so much for joining me today.
Thank you for having me here today.
Of course. Now, can you tell me what this breakfast is and kind of the idea behind it?
The Food for Thought Breakfast is organized by the Lloydminster Elder Abuse Prevention Committee. And really the goals of the event are twofold. One, we really do want to bring seniors together, provide an opportunity for them to build connection, be aware of what's available in community, and just appreciate seniors, because we really do love our seniors in this community. Secondly, we also want to raise awareness around elder abuse to help create a better understanding of what elder abuse is and what kind of supports there are in the community.
That sounds amazing, and something very, very important to have for people to learn about. Now, I know that, seniors are the most easily targeted for, like you said, elder abuse and scam calls and all that. So why do you think it's important to have this breakfast to get people involved to learn more about it?
Well, as you said, seniors are frequently targeted by scams and fraudsters who are seeking to take financial advantage of them. And it's important for seniors to be aware of some of the tactics and some of the tricks that scammers use when they're trying to get a hold of their funding, or even those situations where it may be a family member who doesn't have the best of intentions, and they are taking advantage of the generosity or the trust of that senior. And we want to make sure that the seniors are taken care of. A lot are on fixed income, and so a financial blow through a scam or through fraudulent activity can really have big consequences for their quality of life, and as well as their well-being.
Now that sounds awesome, and it's great that the city is putting something on like this to get the word out and to get more people more informed about this, because it is an issue, and I've seen it. It just doesn't happen here; it happens everywhere, and so I think that it's very important for people to learn more about it, and for seniors themselves to be more aware of what's a scam and what's not, and try to avoid that happening. Now, for the breakfast for the day, what can people expect when they show up? Do they need to buy tickets? Is it just come as you are? What is kind of the situation for the actual day?
Well, we are hoping for folks to RSVP in advance. That way we know how many to expect. And then that way the seniors that come can expect a tasty breakfast. So folks can RSVP that they would like to attend the breakfast by going to lloydminster.ca / FCSS events and register through there. If they need assistance, they can also call the city and we'll assist them with registering 780-875-6184. For again, we're expecting a really tasty breakfast that's being sponsored by Synergy Credit Union. And we have two speakers. We have Melissa Starchuk, who's a fraud specialist at Synergy Credit Union, as well as Cheryl Krusinger, who is an internal auditor and certified fraud examiner. So you get a little bit of food, a little bit of education, and we're hoping that everyone will have a good time.
Awesome. Well, thank you so much for joining me today. I think this is such a great idea for people to learn more and, help protect our seniors, because they are really important to the community. And it's tragic that we have to see so many get taken advantage of. So thank you so much for joining me, and I cannot wait for this breakfast.
Thank you.
Furniture set and design supplied by Furniture Gallery, downtown Lloydminster.
Joining us today for Primetime Local News is author Edward Willett. Thank you so much for taking the time to speak with us today, Edward.
Thanks for having me on. I'm always happy to be on.
Really happy to have you on here because you were speaking on your first ever novel, and it's called Soulworm, and this is now available in new editions, so it's back out there. So let's starting off, can you just kind of describe exactly how this was, released back in the day, just a little bit of a history and a backstory on Soulworm?
Yes, this was my first published novel, not the first one I'd written because I started writing them in high school. This was the first one that got published. And at the time that I wrote it, I was actually working for the Weyburn Review because I started my career as a newspaper reporter and then editor. So I was a reporter for 1980 to 1984 and then editor from 84 to 88 at the Weyburn Review. And sometime along in there, I wrote Soulworm. It wasn't published until 1997, but I've left it set when it was written, so it's basically set in the 1980s. So I even put a Stranger Things font on it for the title because of that. So it's important to me, and it was my first published novel, and it was also my first one that was shortlisted for an award. It was shortlisted for Best First Book at the Saskatchewan Book Awards the year it came out. So that was a great honor, and made me think, hey, maybe I do know something about writing after all. I should have brought it out last year for the 25th anniversary, but I missed it by a bit. But it's now out in a new edition. I went through it. I spruced it up a little. No major changes, just some light editing, and put a new cover on it. And it's published through Shadowpaw Press.
And I think that's a really cool theme, especially how you're saying you want it to relate to this day and age, especially how it's based back in the 80s. So I think that's really cool. I think people nowadays really love that still. So can you kind of describe what it's all about, just for people out there that may not have heard about Soulworm?
Yeah, it's not the simplest thing to explain, I've discovered over the years, but it starts with a car crash actually in just outside Weyburn. But then all of a sudden we're in a parallel world, a fantasy world. And in this world, there are these things called soul worms, which you could think of as a demon. They're not demons, they're not supernatural, but they are kind of spirit creatures. And they feed off of hatred and violence and that sort of thing. And in that world, there's this cast of priestesses who fight them. And there's a character there who's she should be a full priestess, but her power hasn't manifested itself, and now she's getting kind of old. She's like 16, and normally she'd be a full priestess by now, and she isn't. So somebody manages to get, who's infected with the soul worm, manages to get into their temple, their fortress, and then slips through a portal that they had discovered that leads them to Weyburn, Saskatchewan, of all places. And so this soul worm manages to get through into Weyburn, and they have to send somebody after it. And it's supposed to be one of the full priestesses, and they're only going in spirit. They can't send them bodily. And instead, it's our young heroine from the priestesses that gets sent through. But when she gets there, she finds herself in the body of with just kind of an observer, not able to do anything, of this girl in Weyburn, whose best friend and she were in this accident that started things off, and her friend has been strange since then, and that's because she is now host to the soul worm. And so this priestess is not yet a full priestess, but she's got to somehow save the world from this soul worm before it manages to spawn by creating a violent incident that it can feed off of. So that's kind of it in a nutshell. And like I said, it's not the easiest thing to explain.
And now when this was first published and you were seeing that strong support, with the awards and everything, and just seeing how the strong reaction for it when it was first published, how does it feel to come out now in new edition?
Well, it's one of the great things about the publishing world we live in now is that you have much more capability to do that sort of thing. Shadowpaw Press is my publishing company. And although I publish many other authors as well, and I've published everything from nonfiction to historical fiction, and I'm reprinting other novels that have reverted to the authors because their publisher went away or something like that. So this falls right into that. But the only reason I can do that is because it has become possible to do that through print-on-demand technology and online bookstores and all of that stuff. So in a way, this is taking advantage of new technology to put out something that came out long before anybody ever dreamed of any of that kind of technology, which is kind of fun as well. But it is, as I said, it's still set in the 1980s. And one reason for that, a very simple reason, is anything set nowadays, you have to deal with cell phones and the internet and everything else. And there are certain aspects of the story that if the characters could text each other or whatever, it wouldn't work. It's like Buffy the Vampire Slayer. Half those stories don't work if they can text each other. So that's one reason it's set right when it was written.
Perfect, Edward. Well, it's always really nice chatting with you. I think you'll be seeing some good reaction and strong support once again for Soul Worm when it's out now in the new edition. So thank you so much for joining us today.
Thank you for having me on.
And that's our show on this Monday night. If you live in Alberta and haven't voted, get out there and vote. We'll see you back here again tomorrow.